All right, all right. I'll take your hints. I get it. I move around a little too much when I'm standing up. So here I am. I'm sitting down. Are you happy? Sorry, I just dropped my pen. Give me 1 second, Mac.
Cerveza cristal. Cerveza cristal.
Pretty good, Goo. Pretty good. Pretty good. Now, my biggest question, which I haven't seen anyone even ask, I think because they're just so blown away by what country did that, by the way?
Argentina.
Do they just not show the 5 seconds of the real movie in that time?
I wouldn't know, but the information that I do have is that Lucasfilm, the lawyers for Lucasfilm, were not happy about that because they believe that it misled viewers into thinking that, maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi was just going to slug one back or Palpatine was ready to, have a nice afternoon. And, they went ahead and took that off. The Advertising Ethics Committee took it off in Argentina, and they ruled in favor of Lucasfilm.
If George Lucas doesn't think that Obi-Wan spent 40 years in the fucking desert and didn't get plastered every day, he's a fucking idiot.
Especially the Obi-Wan that we saw on the show seemed like a bit of a downer.
A little bit more down and out than what we were led to believe, for sure.
Like they decided not to show us him doing heroin. That's how fucking down he was.
I imagine, maybe not 40. What was it, 20 years he basically hung out in the desert?
15,
I imagine
16.
How old's Luke in the first movie?
Isn't he 17 or 18?
Yeah, so
we should know that.
So he's probably in the desert for 17 years. And as we've seen, it aged him horribly. But I just imagine him waking up, cracking a beer, eating some sort of bullshit sand desert meal, and then he goes out back and starts cutting rocks up with his lightsaber. That's all he does all day, every day.
Cracks a beer, eats some whale. It's like another day of this bullshit.
Where would they get whale in the desert?
You watch the Obi-Wan show. They had space whale. Remember he was taking a little hunk home for himself?
I forgot that whales fly through space in Star Wars.
Space whales.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
One goo, three, yeah. Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
And I'm Mac.
And now that bit is over, I can take my sweater off.
That's why you were wearing a sweater?
Yeah, because I saw in the little clip there that Obi-Wan has, first off, he's wearing a brown robe, and then when he reaches in, he has a black robe. Whatever, I was wearing a black sweater. It all works.
All right, good enough for you, Goo.
Yeah.
Today, folks, we are doing the 2023 Mac and Guvie Vault. This, of course, started as one of our... this is sort of like the tentpole of the podcast when we transitioned to movies 6-7 years ago, Goo. We started going through every year that we deemed reasonable. So we went all the way back to 1985, I believe, and would talk about the best and worst movies of a given year. And then we would both nominate 2 each for you folks on Twitter to go vote and enter a movie into our vault, the Mac and Guvie Vault. This was always fun doing, and now we only get to do it once a year since we did all the years. So
yeah, I mean, going back and looking at movies and categorizing them and doing all this, a lot of nostalgia for us. I really enjoy doing this.
Yeah, and it also helped us, at least initially, like catch some movies we maybe missed way back when, and really rounded out our movie viewings as a movie podcast.
So once again, we'll be going through the best and worst of the year 2023. Mac, are you ready to take a step back in time?
You're traveling. Can't hear it. Turn the volume up on your goddamn phone.
I'll add it in post.
I can't hear any of this.
Yeah, I forgot to load the sound, and I just played it off the phone. If you heard it, good. If you didn't, I'll add it in post.
The year is 2023. We are now 2 months into 2024.
Yes, we're in March.
The Oscars are just around the corner, so we figure this is a good time of the year to talk about 2023 movies. Goo, I don't know about you, but I ended up getting to 53 2023 movies. And honestly, I'm probably going to do another 2 or 3 before the Oscars because I have 7 of the 10 Best Picture nominees I've seen, and I want to get to at least 2 more, if not all 3. So where are you at with that?
I'm at 45, and the goal always is around 52. So credit to you. Like to do roughly one a week. So I do apologize for being a little low here. There would be some more Oscar movies if they were readily available. A lot of them aren't as available or weren't as available in the last month as they usually are.
You know, it's funny too. The one that has been the most readily available for like 6 months now is Maestro. Zero desire to see it, Goo. It's the one of the 10 Best Picture nominees I have no desire in watching. So,
which was made just to be nominated.
Yeah, literally, that's it.
And not win, just to be nominated.
Goo, I don't know what your thoughts are on the year as a whole, but my prevailing thought about the 2023 movie experience was that there's actually a ton of really solid to good movies.
Yeah.
The middle tier of 2023 is very strong. I think it does lack the heavy hitters at the top, as we've seen from the last 5 or 6 years, minus the top 2. I think the top 2 are all timers, but we've seen in the best years in the last decade have given us like 5 or 6 all timers. It just has the 2, but again, pretty good year overall. I do think the general thought from 2023 is that obviously people remember Barbenheimer, but I think the whole DC debacle and the Flash and Marvel kind of falling short in general, comic book movies, did not meet expectations for 2023.
It was the year of the flopbuster.
That's a good word. I like that.
I didn't make it up. I stole that.
All right.
I did make up Barbenheimer, though.
Yeah, that was you. You were the first one to talk about that.
So we start with the bad movies, the dishonorable discharges.
Yeah, so I have like 7 tiers, 8 tiers of movies I did here. And so if you want to ping,
that's fine.
You want to ping pong back and forth here. I have my bottom category here, Goon, by Mount Worstmore. My bottom 4 movies of the year.
I mean, you should have sent that to me ahead of time and I would have done something similar, but I just have bad. I have they were movies, good, and then the top.
Yeah, so I have that except with like 3 more tiers.
All right, bad. I did not enjoy The Machine starring Bert Kreischer. He just doesn't do it for me, but congrats to them on getting a theater release.
Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to watch that movie. It's just like that story from his stand-up was 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and it was just too.
And this is also a follow-up on the story. This isn't even really the story.
Oh, really? So I didn't even know that. Goo, let me run through my Mount Worstmore here, and I'm sure you have these just as low as I do. A movie actually you still haven't seen is We Have a Ghost. One of the worst movies I've ever seen.
I'm gonna watch it.
It's really fucking bad. Old Dads, Goo, the Bill Burr movie.
I'm not gonna watch that. I can't.
It was so fucking bad, and I am the biggest Bill Burr guy on the planet. When I saw him at Fenway a couple years ago, he teased this movie. I was looking forward to it really bad. A movie I know you despise is Strays, Goo.
Worst movie on the year. I hated every second of it. And there is some great voiceover talent in it. Not that any of them do a good job with it. The dialogue is terrible. I hated the story. And this is the one that I would like to have removed from my brain.
Rounding out my Mount Worstmore, I think the 4th worst movie of the year. The latest breaking addition to the 53 is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Goo. This movie is fucking terrible.
Did you finish it?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
So, yes, it is bad. And I'll even say the first 30 minutes or so is kind of unwatchable.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I think the first half of the movie is like light years better than the second half.
No. The last, let's say 75 minutes is just bonkers, off the wall. The dialogue is just one-liner garbage. And this movie, the entire thing, looks like trash. But I enjoyed myself.
I will give it this. It leans into the ridiculousness more than the first one did. However, it's much worse than the first one. I wonder if I didn't hate it as much because I just saw Madam Web 2 weeks ago, and Madam Web is like on a whole other level of bad. But this movie's pretty fucking bad.
So they're pretty comparable, but I would say the big difference is that Momoa wants to be there. Momoa likes this character. And Patrick Wilson, crafty lefty, just throwing innings.
I think there was some so bad it's good that I laughed 3 or 4 times in this movie. That didn't happen to Madam Web.
I'm gonna kill me a dead mermaid. Favorite line of the year. I'm so upset that we didn't see it in time for the Guvie awards because that would have won. That was my favorite line. I had to stop the movie, take a deep breath, rewind again to make sure I did not mishear it. And it was, I'm a kill me a dead mermaid.
If I had heard the word orichalcum one more time, I was gonna fucking kick my TV.
Orichalcum. I also loved Randall Park at one point going, "Can I please leave?" And I'm like, he wants to leave the movie.
Literally,
He doesn't just
yeah.
want to. His character doesn't want to leave this situation. This is the actor saying to the director, "Can I please leave?"
And obviously, you know, this movie dealt with reshoots and whatnot. It got bumped a whole year. But I thought one of the worst scenes in the whole movie is when he sneaks up on Aquaman and Orm in
Yeah.
that cave lair thing, and they're shooting it. It keeps cutting from him to those two. They never shot it together. So I
Mhm.
wonder like what the original scene was supposed to be in there. Maybe there was a connection to
Oh, I
something
have
else.
so many questions of like, how did they have Ben Affleck in this movie? How did they? I know there was a one thing where they might have had Michael Keaton in it. Like, what were the original thoughts or different stories that they had going on? Like, they actually shot a Batman thing with this, and there's nothing to do with it. The last scene looks so bad. Him doing the press conference, it's just him in front of a giant green screen. First off, the entire movie is a giant green screen.
Yeah, true. Did you see the mid-credit scene too of Orm
Yes.
eating a burger? That was horrible. This movie is just I think if we had watched it in theaters in December, no doubt would have hated it more, but because 3 months passed and Madam Web happened in between, I didn't hate it as much as I probably should
Can
have.
we do a full podcast in a week? Not next week, but the week after?
I honestly you're gonna have to lead that because I forget almost
I have
everything
a
that happened.
full timeline of
All
things.
right.
I
just
love
have
this movie.
one note or
I loved it. It is my exact style.
Oh, also, what's the excuse for just having the land of the lost in the South Pacific? Why was that land with all these oversized animals? What the fuck was that?
I also loved how when they would put up like where he was in the world, at one point it was like somewhere in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, somewhere in the South Pacific, and then they
No,
pop
but
up on
it was
that
like,
random
but,
island.
like that's a big fucking area.
Yeah, massive area.
Also they put Orm in a prison in a desert that was right next to the ocean. That's a bad idea. Put him way more inland.
I also they never really explained why he's a sponge when he absorbs water. Now,
All right, let's save some of this because this is a 2023 movie. We're spending too much time on Aquaman.
Go ahead, you can run through some of the stuff you got.
All right, I also did not care for Shazam: Fury of the Gods. The bad guys were terrible in it. It doesn't look very good, and it doesn't have the elf-like, childlike wonderment that the original one did with Zachary Levi.
I didn't mind the movie, Goo. I know it's not good, but I thought it had enough of like the heart and soul that the first one had that it like saved the movie. It did. The movie's not good, but it saved it from being terrible.
Good Burger 2, and I'm still shocked. Like this won the award for this came out this year for 2023, and it just came out in November.
Yeah, I don't know why you submitted yourself to watching that one.
Keenan and Kel.
Yeah, still.
Flamin' Hot, the worst of the corporate dramedies. I hated the narration in it. We did not need that. Just tell the story with the actors. And most of it's a lie from what I'm reading.
That movie just looked so fake. Like the production value, it just
felt
looked fake. Yeah, it didn't look good.
About My Father. Lol.
You and your Sebastian Maniscalco.
We support each other, baby. We support our fellow Pazans.
There's two comedians that you're going to support forever, and I don't like either of them. It's Sebastian Maniscalco and Joe Coy. I need you to get off both of them.
Look, Joe Coy is family.
I thought
when you're Filipino, Joe Coy is family.
You see, he's touring. How is he touring again after that debacle?
He's playing the Garden tomorrow night. I've been trying to work some backroom deals to try and get to meet him and be a family hero, but apparently he's not going to be here. So
I am surprised with the amount of like media people that you can't get like a press pass for that type of event.
No, I thought that he'd be in the building here. I thought that he'd be at
gotcha. Work. BZ. Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Transformers Rise of Beasts did not do it for me. I feel like everyone in the movie should have died several times. They were attacked by giant robots, and the Beast bots didn't really even transform at all. They just stayed as beasts.
Yeah, that was pretty frustrating. As a noted Transformers guy, a bigger fan of those movies than most, I was so disappointed in what they gave us in this movie. I don't know how it did so well, but it did. We get like 7 transformations in the whole fucking movie. It just it was not good at all.
You People was
good jumping off point here.
it felt like a very, very long movie that might have only been 90 minutes long. I don't know. The dialogue, not very good. It was something that you were very excited to see with Jonah Hill, Eddie Murphy, a great cast. And it missed the mark. It really, really missed the mark. And I would vote for a president if they ran on, let's make Eddie Murphy fun again.
So this is a good transition for me. I'll do a couple in a row here, Goo. I have You People in a tier of its own, above the Mount Rushmore, but below everything else, because I recognize the movie sucks. I didn't, when I finished that movie, I was like, that wasn't good. It didn't get me upset. The way everyone else talks about this movie, it's as if it's the worst movie ever made.
No,
I didn't totally mind it.
As someone, may I speak about my own life for a second?
Sure.
As someone who is in a mixed race family, some of the things did speak to my wife, who does, she's from a different country, and now she deals with my white family. So some things do speak to her that might not speak to other people, but it could have been a lot better.
I will say about your whiteness, you are clearly white.
I'm super white.
Your family carries enough of an Italian tradition that you're just a little white. You guys have traditions from the old country that you still carry on. 90% of whites do not have that.
So I'm just in the 10% of whites. What is happening?
I think you're not as white as one.
Oh, thank you to the other Billy D for making that Photoshop of you switching our hair, and I couldn't tell which one of us was which.
Yeah, that's not a great sign for you. Goo, my two biggest disappointments on the year, I have these just above You People. Two movies I really, really wanted to like. Asteroid City, the Wes Anderson movie from last year. It just missed. He went too Wes Anderson-y. It just didn't work for me. And then Goo Bottoms, a comedy that was promised a lot, had a pretty good trailer. It was your classic. Everything that's funny is in the trailer. They tried way too hard in the movie to get you to like certain things and really root for certain things. I'm all for these sort of comedies that are, hitting, the LGBT
different
community.
demos.
Yes, yeah. I'm all for that. However, don't be lazy when you do it. You can't make a super bad type of movie 15 years later and have it be 20% as good as super bad and expect me to love it. It felt really lazy.
Yeah, and those are two movies that actually did pretty well, say critically or with Rotten Tomato scores with audience. And Mac just likes to be different. Mac's in that 10% of whites. He's back. You're on mute.
I'm not in that 10% of whites. I don't think. I don't have any.
Don't put me in that 10% of whites.
I'm pretty milquetoast. We don't have. I'm too much Irish. We have no traditions. I'm in that fucking 90%.
Freelance, Mac. 1 second. Freelance. This is, speaking of white, this is the most generic, genreless mashed potato with mayonnaise sandwich on white of the year. This was so boring, and it has nothing. This is John Cena, Allison Brie.
Yeah, it seems like you really hate this movie because you talked about it quite a bit, and I'm never gonna watch it. Never gonna watch it, Goo. Goo, here's a tier for you. You've mentioned a couple of these movies already. These are 8 movies that if you liked, it doesn't bother me. I don't think they're good, but I didn't dislike them.
Why didn't you send me these categories? These sound like fun.
Well, here you go. A Haunting in Venice. I thought it should have been really good, and it wasn't. It bothered me that it just fell so far short of what it should have been. The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid at times was pretty good, and then the last 45 minutes ruined everything that the first hour
I actually have it as good. I thought it's one of their better live action adaptations. I will agree with you. The last half an hour hurt my eyes, hurt my ears. It's not good. I hated it. But the lead actress there, Halle Bailey, I thought that she was great. I thought Melissa McCarthy had a ton of fun with this role. Granted, she was given the option of chewing up the scenery, and you're allowed to when you're a Disney villain in a live action cartoon.
Good. That's why it falls into the category that if you liked it, it doesn't bother me. I understand those points.
I'm glad I don't bother you.
Transformers: Rise of the Beasts also in here. I don't know why so many people liked it, but it doesn't kill me. Knock at the Cabin. I really wanted to love this movie, and the premise is interesting. I just feel like it was almost half-assed. Like the end was almost too. No, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough.
I thought this movie was so boring.
It ended up
I
being
thought
pretty
it was
boring.
so boring. The entire
After the
thing.
first like 35 minutes, it was pretty boring. You're right.
Yeah.
It's a good word for it. Next goal wins. One
Yes.
of my 4 or 5 most anticipated movies of the year. I thought there were some pretty good elements in it. There was a couple laugh out loud moments. It just wasn't very funny. And it also was almost too lighthearted at times to deal
Mhm.
with a little bit of the subject matter. It wasn't very good.
Good. This is the first time I'm actually able to talk to you about this movie because I've done it by myself for a while. This was close to being in the bad category for me. But like you said, there were a couple pretty funny moments. I love that opening scene with Reese Darby. That
Yep.
killed me. But
Yep.
that's also a bad setup for like, oh, I'm expecting more laughs. And
Right,
that's
right.
the biggest laugh of the movie. The Venn diagram is the funniest, or the 12 steps of grief. What was it?
Yeah,
Whatever,
I think it was
whatever
7
Reese
steps or
Darby
6
did.
steps or whatever, 5 steps, whatever it
Yes,
was.
whatever Reese Darby did at the beginning was the best part of the movie. It has some okay Taika humor, but it also felt like a lazy AI generated Taika movie, right?
This was one of those movies. It was weird, and it happens. There's 2 or 3 every year where I actually really liked the actors and the acting.
Mhm.
The dialogue is what hurt the movie. The writing is what hurt the movie, and it sucks
Yeah.
to admit that for a Taika movie. I fully agree with you on that.
Cocaine Bear. Would you have this in that category?
Just a category, but all right, I got 3
You
more
know
in
what?
this
I'll let you do
category.
your thing. You have made your own rules on this podcast.
Yeah,
I wish you had told me ahead of time. I just have to listen. I have movies and I'm ready to go, but you do your own thing, man.
Yeah, well, I opened your doc and it had so many notes, and I was like, I can't do that. So, last 3 in this category. Good.
Yes.
One you already mentioned, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I'm fine if someone like that. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I love the original Hunger Games. Ended up being 4 movies, but it's a trilogy of books starring Jennifer Lawrence. I really enjoyed the universe and operating in that sandbox. This movie is a prequel set like 60 or 70 years before, whatever the fuck the time frame is, maybe 50 years before. It was fine. It was fine. It did enough of Hunger Games stuff to keep you interested. It was fine is the word for it. And then I have Leave the World Behind.
Mhm.
This was the Netflix movie with Mahershala Ali, Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke. I really liked like half the movie. I was really intrigued for about half the movie. Just another movie that like I don't think it really saw the vision through. Like it just sort of meandered and fell apart by the end. But if you liked it, I don't hate it. And then
Mhm.
before we jump into more of your movies here, this is a movie that doesn't fit in anywhere. I don't think it's good, but I have thought about this movie like twice a week since watching it. Saltburn. Saltburn was a fucking super weird movie. And again, I don't think it's a good one, but I've thought about Saltburn than more than like 10 movies on the year. It makes no sense.
All right. I actually did not see Saltburn. I said Mac saw it. That's good enough for me. I don't need to see it.
All right, good enough.
All right, Mac, let me rattle off some names here for you. Cocaine Bear. There are like 3 or 4 stories that they were juggling in this movie, and I did enjoy one of them. But for the most part, not as fun as it should have been.
Yep. This was one of those ones that I think it's a good movie.
Mhm.
It just gets less good as it goes on. The first like 40 minutes are very good.
Yeah.
And then the third act just turns in like it was supposed to be this hysterical comedy, and the final 30 minutes is not that at all.
I like the O'Shea Jackson stuff pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything.
By the way, this is my big ball of meh. if you
Yeah,
don't
all right.
mind
So
me
this
saying
in
that.
this tier, I got 9 movies that were good, but I didn't like them as much as everyone else. That's this sort of range for me.
Okay, so I have the Marvels in this, and I
Oh.
will say, look, it's not as bad as everyone says. I didn't love it. And I guess my biggest issue is that the power sets, especially with Captain Marvel, have just made it so confusing as to like, so she's able to punch Thanos while he has a power stone, yet she can't take on this nameless villain that her name is Bardem, right?
No, it was something
Whatever
like
it is.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
So she's able to punch Thanos. She's able to take out a
Dara
sun.
Ben, that was her name. Dara
Whatever.
Ben.
She's able to take out a sun, and now she needs the help from 2 other people to beat this fucking nameless bad guy.
I don't know. You're asking too many questions. I clearly liked this movie a lot more than you did. I had this in the 3 comic book movies that underperformed tier, Goo.
Oh, was
Oddly,
Ant-Man also in there?
yeah, at the end of the year, I had
Yeah.
these 3 movies, 13, 14, 15, Flash, Ant-Man, and the Marvels. I like those movies I guess more than everyone else because they didn't really bother me.
Yeah, I didn't love Ant-Man. It's not as bad as the Marvels to me, but especially now with the Jonathan Majors news, this movie feels more meaningless than ever.
That is
Um,
true. Yep.
Bill Murray is in way too much of it, and he doesn't want to be there. Michael Douglas doesn't want to be there, but he was fun to me, so I enjoy that. This movie doesn't look great. It doesn't look as terrible as everyone says, but it doesn't look great.
I gave the Marvels and Ant-Man the same score, but it's all about context, right?
Mhm.
So at 34 hot dogs, maybe 33 is what I gave him. I forget. The expectations going into Quantumania was a 40 dog movie.
Yeah.
Going into the Marvels, I only expected 33, 34. So that's like I have like a generally good feeling about that movie as opposed to Quantumania. We pick it apart more because it was this bigger, grandiose
We also
experience.
should have said to ourselves, yes, it is the first movie with Kang, but also it's still an Ant-Man movie.
Yeah, but the other two are really good
No, but we
movies.
shouldn't have expected this like big, wider scope movie. We should have still expected something smaller. Granted, they give us something that's too big for Ant-Man anyways. They should have went with something smaller.
And
And
honestly,
small.
if we're like talking dog scores, I only have Quantumania a dog or two under the other two movies. But again, we're talking about the expectation of the movie.
I'd say
The
4 or 5.
The
personally.
other two movies, I didn't expect a 40 dog movie from. I expected
Yeah.
a 34 dog movie from. This movie, I expected 40 and got a 34, which is almost the inverse of the other two.
Please don't destroy the Legend of Foggy Bottom. This does have moments of humor. This is the Please Don't Destroy Boys from SNL. But watching this, all I can think of is other comedy troupes that have either already made this exact movie or they could make a better version of it.
Yeah, it's very rare that I even find their digital shorts funny when it gets tweeted out. These guys are just not for me.
I'll say whether it be Lonely Island, the Workaholics guys, Mystery Team, the Derek comedy, like there's so many other troupes that I find so much better than them.
Yeah, agree wholeheartedly.
Mac, this movie made a lot of money. It wasn't for me, and I knew it within 5 seconds, and that is Wonka.
God, I maybe should have had a 54th movie on the year. I attempted to watch this movie about 2 weeks ago. I made it a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the movie. The opening number is so bad.
If I was at home when I saw this, I would have turned it off. I almost left the theater.
Yep, that's what I did. I turned it off and I said, I can't do this. If your opening number to this Wonka movie can't rope me in, the rest of this movie is going to blow.
As soon as he started singing, I was like, I don't like this song. I don't like his singing voice.
Yeah, was not for me.
I was like, oh, I made a huge mistake.
And that movie crushed it, Goo. It's still making money in the theater.
Huge number.
It makes no sense. I thought it was, obviously, I only saw 1% of the movie, but the 1% I saw was fucking terrible.
And then finally, the last movie in my big ball of meh is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. He time travels, Mac. Sorry to spoil things for you, but he travels back in time in this movie. I did like the opening CGI scene with him going back in time and fighting Nazis, not just one Nazi. That was a fun 20 minutes there. But then you get to him in the 60s, I believe, and he's old. Look, I'm sorry. He's old. And like, none of this looks good. None of this has that same, like, the old Indiana Jones movies, they don't move at like the fastest pace, but you always feel like he's in peril. This feels like he's old and it's fake.
Out of respect for the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I will never see this movie.
Also, he rides a horse in a subway.
Yeah, I'm all set with that.
Like through a subway track.
In my mind, the universe ended with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Goo.
Yes.
Kind of similar to your big ball of meh. These are 9 movies that were good, but I didn't like them as much as everyone else.
Your categories suck. Half of your categories are riding the fence.
Yes. Yeah. But again, the big takeaway from the year is like all this in between. These are all like pretty decent. It's just
if either the other Billy D or Doc could make a graphic of Max sitting squarely on a fence, that'd be great.
Without further ado, 9 movies that were good, but I didn't like them as much as everyone else. John Wick 4. I don't know why anyone still watches movies in this universe. We're just killing time in this universe now. Nothing substantial happens.
I personally love this movie, so don't listen to Mac. I thought it was great. I thought they had new action to it. I didn't necessarily need the full runtime of it, but the over-the-head scene, Like the over the ceiling scene of them going top down. That was beautiful. I love the falling down the stairs scene, very Simpsons-esque. And I like the duel. Also, Skarsgård might have been the best villain in this universe.
It seems like this universe only exists now for 3 5-minute scenes in each movie, and that's just not for me. I'm all set with John Wick. Theater Camp. Theater Camp had a lot of promise. Baseline, it's a good movie. It is billed as a hysterical movie. It's not. It falls short of that. A couple really funny scenes in there. Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people love this movie. I don't. It's definitely better than it should have been. Still just not for me.
Didn't love it. I did like it, and I think that Chris Pine, tons of charm, and really makes the movie. Without him, I don't know how well you sell this. Also, the cameo in it, little overrated.
The character of Jonathan is one of the better characters.
Jonathan also very good. Yeah.
A+ character. The Super Mario Brothers movie. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It got in and got out. It did a job. I think it definitely could have been much better, though. It definitely
could have been better, but it definitely did its job of being bright, simple enough for children, and just having the most Easter eggs that you can have in 90 minutes.
Yeah, agreed. These next four are very similar in that I think critics really liked them. I just didn't love these or like them as much as the critics. Dumb Money, Blackberry, The Covenant, and The Killer. All like objectively good movies. All movies that I will never watch again, will never think about again.
Okay, rip those off again real quick for me.
Dumb Money.
Okay, so Dumb Money, I did not love. I thought the pacing was not good. The acting, I like the actors in the movie, but I didn't like how the story was told. And then also, this just happened.
Yeah, it was like good. I don't know. I guess I wasn't.
Also, the sound mixing. This movie's way too loud.
I didn't catch that, but maybe I didn't have it up enough. Blackberry.
I love Blackberry. Blackberry almost made my top 4 on the year.
Really?
I like
stunning.
I think that Glenn Howerton is like, outside of the Oscar movies, this is my favorite performance on the year. I thought he's so good in this, and maybe it's just because I didn't know the full story behind Blackberry, but I thought this was as good as Air or close to Air.
Really?
Yes, I love Blackberry.
Like, to me, there's like 4 or 5 of these corporate dramedies from the year, and this was like my 3rd or 4th favorite.
This is my 2nd.
Okay.
And I think this might have taken more chances than Air, especially with its casting.
I can't even believe you're talking about it in the same breath as
I love Blackberry. I thought Blackberry was so good. I was glued to my screen. I was glued to my little Blackberry screen where I was watching this movie on.
It was good. I just didn't like it as much as
everyone
else,
on the phone,
including you, I guess.
You know that?
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
I haven't seen that one.
All right. And then The Killer. This was David Fincher.
I think I might have liked it a little bit more than you. I liked it as like this more quiet, messier hitman that, makes a mistake. And now the entire movie is just following around this one guy trying to make up for it.
Yeah, but don't you feel like it was building towards something that it never finished?
Yes, and also it was built more as a John Wick movie, which it wasn't even close to being.
Yeah, it was not at all. Yeah.
But I liked it, yeah.
Another tier before I pass it back to you here, Gu.
Am I in this podcast?
3 movies that not enough people talked about, Gu. 3 movies.
Are you doing this so that we can do TikTok clips? I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate it.
Totally Killer. It was either Netflix or a Prime movie starring Kiernan Shipka, and Julie Bowen was her mother.
Oh.
This movie's surprisingly good, much better than it had any business being. And to me is like, I know Keith liked it, hashtag Dork liked it. No one talked about this movie last year, and it's a pretty good little horror, thriller, slasher comedy. Blue Beetle, Gu. Blue Beetle was a pretty good movie. I haven't heard anyone speak about this movie in 10 months.
So pros and cons here. Number 1, I think that Zolo Metaduena, very, very charming. I love the family dynamics of the movie. But if this had come out 10, 15 years ago, would have been considered great, but it's pretty much the exact same as every other origin story.
Yeah, you're not completely wrong about that. I guess I was surprised at how decent it was, and the fact that it came out right when DC was crumbling, and this stands out as one of the better DC movies. So I'm just surprised it didn't get
While I prefer The Flash, I would say that Blue Beetle, like if you said this is a better movie, it absolutely is, because it's way more self-contained and you don't need to know 50 years of movies going into it. So
yeah, I too preferred The Flash. And then my 3rd movie, and 3 movies that not enough people talked about in 2023, Tetris. Tetris was one of those corporate dramedies starring Taron Egerton. What I really liked about this movie, now it's not great. I think it's very similar or in the same tier as Blackberry. I was a little more invested in this story than I was in Blackberry.
That's because you were hoping that Russia won, right?
And because the story
Classic
is a little
match.
more like thrilling, and I didn't know the outcome, whereas we do with Blackberry. I just was more invested, so it was better in the whole runtime for me.
Can I get to my good movies?
Yeah, here you go. Here you go. And just so you know, in this range, 12, 15, we're officially in my top 25 after all those movies. We just
good.
Yeah.
I thought that No Hard Feelings was quite good. I thought there was, for me at least, like a 20 to 25 minute stretch of being a really, really funny movie. I do think it kind of falls off by the end. But I like the chemistry between Jennifer Lawrence and the kid. And Matthew Broderick, this might be the funniest I've ever seen him be.
Jennifer Lawrence carries this movie. She
goes all out. So I also want to give her credit for that. She goes all out for this movie. And, you know, we're trying to save comedies. We're trying to get comedies back into theaters. So thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm obviously a big J-Law fan. This movie is her, and not for nothing, the kid, I forget his name, Andrew something, I think. He's very good in the role he plays, but his role is so like pigeonholed, and she does everything the whole movie. It's just, I was surprised at how much I like this movie. A very good R-rated rom-com type of situation.
Scream 6, whereas I do like it, but it's not as funny or cool as it thinks it is.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that halfway through the year, it was probably in my like top 8. Really, really liked it, and by the end of the year, I liked it less.
It kept on doing things in the movie like tossing knives to itself, and they're like, yeah.
By the way, the movies you're talking about right now, the tier that they're in, because I'm sure same general range here. If someone said this movie was their favorite of 2023, I wouldn't vomit. That's the tier we're in here. Good.
You got to share these beforehand, man. Come on. Creed 3, where I do think that we might have had a disadvantage of seeing it months after, and the critics loved it. It got a very high Roddy tease. It made a lot of money at the box office, but this was even borderline of being good for me. This is almost meh because it is just so paint by numbers. It's so predictable, and I was hoping for so much more. I will say that it is better than Creed 2, but nowhere close to 1.
I am now realizing I never put Creed 3 on my list.
Because you forgot about it?
Yeah, so I guess I saw 54 movies. And I actually thought the movie was not good.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
I
say
can
it
see
was
that.
bad. It might barely float. I would have this way lower than you have.
It reminds me of a later Rocky movie where you can predict each act.
It was, I don't know, it felt half-assed. The story felt half-assed.
Yeah.
Now, Michael B. Jordan is great because he's always great. And Jonathan Majors was actually very good. The story was just almost like too simple.
Yeah, it's way too simple. Thanksgiving, and outside of the first 15 minutes, I thought it was pretty fun horror slasher and had pretty inventive kills. But I will say the first 15 minutes, I didn't know if it was a real movie.
I stumbled upon something about this movie last week. So Sydney Sweeney was on SNL, and one of the pre-recorded skits I actually liked was the Bo and Yang one where he pretends to be straight and he makes out with Gina Gershon for a second. And because of that, I learned Gina Gershon was in this movie. She's in Thanksgiving. Yeah, how about that? I love Gina Gershon.
Is that your Max fun fact?
That's my Max fun fact of the week. Gina Gershon is in Thanksgiving. I've been in love with Gina Gershon since Showgirls. Who has?
Well done, sir. All right, A24's Dream Scenario. Nicolas Cage is on a bit of a heater. I didn't love this as much as the critics did, but this is definitely interesting. And in one scene, he farts and comes his pants at the same time.
I don't know. I can't bring myself to watch this movie. I don't know what it is. I'm just not interested.
It's just average guy who wants to be recognized, who wants to be seen, who wants to be an author. And then when he finally is famous for something that he has no control over, he is the villain.
I'm sure I would like it. I'm honestly sure I would like it. I just can't bring myself to do it.
Merry Little Batman, which was made this last year as a little holiday, I would say maybe tradition in my house going forward. My son loved this. I thought it was pretty fun and good Batman showing for the youngsters.
Yeah. I when I saw this trailer or whatever, I sent it to you immediately and I was like, Goo's going to like this.
The movie that I think might have given us, I'm saying the both of us, I'm going to lump you in with right here, Mac.
It's a bold statement.
the heartiest laugh of the year would be Renfield.
Yeah. All right. So we're seeing eye to eye in this tier, Goo. This is also one of the movies that if someone told me was their favorite of the year, I wouldn't vomit. Renfield has 3 or 4 moments that I fucking loved.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say it saves the movie because I do think the movie fell short of what Goo and I expected.
Yeah.
I still felt the movie was pretty fucking good and actually hysterical. The scene you're talking about in Renfield's apartment when Cage is there,
so
fucking
good.
killed me. Absolutely killed me.
If the movie was just Cage and Holt and it was just that story, if it was just 40 minutes long, I wouldn't have minded paying the $15-20 just for that.
They definitely could have done more.
Was terrible.
Yeah, they definitely could have done more Dracula and Renfield adventures.
Yeah.
The vision of this movie, I think, is what hurt it. But what we actually got, I still think was pretty good.
No, I think anytime that Cage was on screen, so let's say 20 minutes of that, those 20 minutes are must-see.
And we're at this point in Nick Cage's career, and this is why you and I both loved, what's the Pedro Pascal movie with him?
That is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yeah, the reason why we both love that is because Cage is in this stage of his career where he's self-aware and leaning into these roles, and he does that so well.
No, but he does it in a very specific way because he does not like to be mocked. Like, that's one of his thing. He does not like he hated Andy Samberg doing that. I don't know if you saw that clip on TikTok of there's this interviewer who goes around and he does the actor's voice back at them, and he does the Cage voice, and you can tell Nick Cage is like, "Oh, cool, dude."
Like he is a Coppola. There's another Max fact.
Wait, start that one again. Do it again.
Yeah. So if you guys didn't know at home here, there's a little Max fact of the week here. Nicolas Cage is actually a Coppola of the Francis Ford Coppola family. Sofia Coppola, I believe it's his uncle. Is that what it is? Francis Ford Coppola, his uncle?
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. I butchered the fact here.
I don't care what you say. It could be wrong. Say it with more confidence next time.
He's a Coppola. Coppola.
Yeah.
Coppola.
And he changed his name because he didn't want to rely on the Coppola name for his acting. Also, there is the great SNL sketch, or it's him hosting SNL. And he's talking about his female co-stars in his movies. And he's like, Cher, she's got a great ass. Or so-and-so, great set of tits. And then Lorne Michaels calls him off stage and he's like, hey, how would you feel if someone said that about Sofia Coppola? And Cage grabs him by the neck. He's like, that's my cousin.
A plus.
Great stuff.
Goose, some of the movies, again, in this range, where if you told me it was your favorite movie of the year, I wouldn't vomit. TMNT, Mutant Mayhem. I know you liked it a lot more than me. I recognize it definitely is someone's favorite movie of the year. It's just not mine.
So I have it, I think, at number 10 on the year for myself, and I've seen it, I don't know, a dozen times now. I think it's such a great readaptation of the TMNT, having them be younger, having them be actual teenagers, having them be voiced by actual teenagers, and then having those teenagers in the same room when they're doing the voiceover adds such life to the movie.
I think a better villain would have bumped this up like 3 or 4 dogs.
No, and I think that the second movie coming up here, whatever they call it, that's coming out, I believe, next year with Shredder, I think is going to be fantastic. My question, because they're making an accompanying animated series to go with it, it's not the same animation style. It probably costs too much money to do it that way. But what are they going to do? Because they can't do Shredder in the series because you don't want to blow your load before getting to him in the movie. So you'll just have a bunch of other mutants, which I'm fine with, mutant of the week stuff, but that might hurt it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. Dude, they cloned Tyrone. Have you seen this one yet?
I still haven't finished it. I forgot to finish it. I saw the first 35 to 40 minutes and I enjoy it. It's
a fucking super intriguing idea.
Yeah.
Really well acted. John Boyega's fucking fantastic in it. I just think I didn't get like the pants 10 I was hoping for, like in the climax of the movie, but really good movie, really unique movie. So it stands out amongst the other 54 movies I've seen on the year. Elemental, maybe should have been in the tier of nobody talks about enough. I thought it was one of Pixar's better movies in a long time.
Wow. Okay.
And no one saw it really. No one talked about it. No one saw it.
A movie people talked about and mocked without even seeing is The Flash, where Mac and I believe, like more than most, but we will also say the CGI is terrible. It was done on purpose that way. No, it looks bad. And Ezra Miller, also terrible. And there's 2 of them.
Yeah, I this is interesting because I think I have it at 34 hot dogs,
Yeah.
which tells you it's a good movie. A lot of this movie is not good.
Yeah.
CGI, Ezra Miller, but because the other aspects, it was legitimately funny the whole runtime. Keaton's fantastic.
I
It has a
love Keaton in
couple
this movie.
standout
Yeah.
scenes. So like those scenes were so great that it brings up the rest of the movie. I fully understand if someone hates this movie.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me if you hated it. I really enjoyed my theater experience with this
I
movie.
think the one thing that sucks about this is that we could have gotten this same Keaton performance in a Batman Beyond movie that I would have given 40 hot dogs to.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough there, Goo. Anyone
Keaton
but
rules.
you.
Keaton, shut up. Keaton rules in this movie.
Keaton does rule.
He's so good. But go
He's
ahead.
good every time. Anyone but you, Goo, the Sydney Sweeney rom-com. It had no business being as good as it was, but she's fantastic in it. Glenn Powell's very good. And like with your classic 2000s type of rom-com, late 2000s, this fits in there like that. But what those do well is the side characters. This has a couple really great side characters that rounds it out. Go ahead, Goo.
Is it sexy?
It is very sexy.
I'm going to watch it then.
Yeah, it's good. I think it might be on Netflix now. I'm not sure.
Oh, is it?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm
I'm
going to
don't
watch it.
quote me
If
on
it's
that.
free, I'm absolutely going to watch it. Mac, a movie that we might have had not even higher at the time, but it just had no chance because of Barbenheimer. It was released 1 week before it, and it just disappeared in the theaters. And that is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. It's just that now. It was part 1 at the time, but that has been scrapped.
I have this in my actual honorable mentions tier.
Okay.
I top 8 that weren't our final 4. So top 12 movies of the
Okay.
year. I still think it's one of the better movies of the year, but you're right. It got absolutely buried.
The awesome action stunts in it, that train scene ruled. Like at that
The
point,
train scene was unbelievable.
the train scene leading up to it, you're saying to yourself, we're getting a little long in the tooth here.
Mm,
Let's end this. And then they give us the train scene.
great. Fantastic. It was so good.
Amazing.
That's one of those scenes, and say what you want about
Mhm.
these Mission Impossible movies. They usually have 2 or 3 scenes in this movie where you're legit like gripping your seat, like, I don't know what's gonna happen here.
I will say though, this did get at points too generic, like too action movie generic with its crap and its MacGuffins. And if I heard the word entity one more time, may ammo burn this place to the ground.
To that point, it's probably the worst Mission Impossible since 3, and I like 3 a lot. That's the Philip Seymour Hoffman one.
Mhm.
I think it is on that tier as opposed to the last 3 or 4. It's not as good as the last 3 or 4.
All right, I'll save Barbie for later because I'm guessing that you have it much higher up.
I have Barbie as my 7th best movie of the year in that
Okay, so let me go to
tier.
maybe my 7th
All
best
right,
movie of
let
the
me
year.
finish off my non-vomit range then. And then we can get into this because we've
Okay.
talked about everything in between. It's only a couple more in here. Goo, Past Lives. Past Lives is getting a ton of Oscar buzz. It's nominated for quite a few awards. I fully understand it. It is a very relatable scenario, what happens in the movie. It's just really boring. It's really
Oh,
like
good.
if you try to
Right.
watch this at night, you're falling asleep. You can't
If I
get
watch
through it.
anything at night, I'm falling asleep.
So that was a little tough. The Creator, Goo.
Mhm.
I would say I really enjoyed 75% of The Creator. I hated John David Washington. This movie nearly ruined it, but the bones of that movie are great. 2 final movies in this tier, Goo. Joyride and you already said No Hard Feelings, right? So then
Correct.
Joyride. Joyride's the last one in this tier for me.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say Joyride might be my 7th or 8th favorite movie on the year. I think it is my favorite. If you're talking just comedy, I think it's my favorite straight comedy on the year. And I think the chemistry and charm with that main cast, with the core 4, is fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked No Hard Feelings a little bit more, but
Mhm.
very similar for me in terms of how I rated them on the year. So for Goo, officially, we're in the honorable mentions section of this podcast.
This whole good part is the honorable mentions. What are you
Yes,
talking
yes,
about?
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
These are the ones that actually I think at one point you could have considered in the top 4 of the year. That's how I'll
Okay.
phrase it.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think this is an amazing send-off to some of my favorite characters. It's a love letter from James Gunn. The Rocket storyline is rough to take at times, but really fills in the character from the first 2 movies, and it is my 2nd favorite of the trilogy.
This is my number 6 movie on the
Mhm.
year. It was certainly in consideration for the top 4 for a long time. I actually have this number 3 in the trilogy, but just barely. It's just behind the first 2 for me. And again, I'll always bring this point up about volume 2. It is a continuation of the first movie. It is
Yeah,
not
but
as good as
sometimes
the
things
first
get
one,
too long.
but
Sometimes
it
things
is
get too long.
still a part of that first movie. And I don't know why you have such a different feeling for the 2
Some might
movies.
say that we are on episode 452 right now, and it's just a continuation from the first episode. But some might also say you guys should have stopped after 78 episodes.
uh, we both love that movie, obviously. Go
Oh, I love it.
movie,
It's great.
a movie you haven't seen. This was my number 12 on the year. I have heard no one at all talk about this. Is the movie Missing? This little
Mhm.
sort of thriller movie with a kidnapping. The tension that this movie builds is fantastic. The little mystery they go about, tough to buy, and the way they kind of solve it. But again, a lot of these movies have that sort of thing. I thought this was one of the best movies of the year, and no one has talked about it.
Killers of the Flower Moon. It is kind of long and it feels kind of long because there have been a lot of long movies this year, but not all of them feel this long. I think all of the acting is amazing in it. Lily Gladstone and Robert De Niro, I think, are the 2 performances that stand out more than any of the other ones. And I do think, I know you didn't like the first hour, but I do think that you needed that first hour to set up the relationship and at least feel like it's kind of real in the last 2 hours.
It's not that I didn't like the first hour. I just think the best part of the movie is the third act. And if we had
Mhm.
gotten more of that and less of the first hour, it would have been better. Dude, this is my number 5 movie on the year. And there's a lot of things in the movie I didn't even like. So that tells you how much potential this movie had.
I might have had it around 7 or 8, maybe.
My main gripe with the movie, and I guess it'll never happen because Scorsese loves telling the bad guy side of his
Yeah.
movies. He's always, that's his thing. Is if you flip the point of view of this movie to Molly's perspective, Lily Gladstone's
POV.
perspective, you would have had a much better, a much more tense movie because the viewer would not have known
Mhm.
everything the way they do in this movie. So again, I think I had it at 36, 37 hot dogs. One of my favorite movies of the year. The best version of this movie is way fucking better than what we actually got. And that it's a little infuriating the more and more I think about it.
Also, I think the final scene, I'm not saying like the end of the movie, but the final scene is kind of silly
Fair enough.
with Martin Scorsese on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I don't know why we were there.
And
Honestly.
speaking of endings of movies that do I like it? I don't know. Or is this in your top 4? Is American Fiction in your top 4?
Yep.
I'm going to skip it then. I'm sorry for stepping on your feet. Maybe
That's
I'll
quite
take
all right.
it out of the audio version. And if you're on YouTube, you get a little extra. Mac, a movie that I loved, and I'm extremely close. I was very close to having in my top 4 is The Holdovers. I think maybe my favorite self-contained, short enough piece of entertainment from the year. Giamatti, Sessa. Sessa's not getting enough love, by the way.
It's definitely not.
Dominic Sessa, this is his first movie from what I can tell on IMDb. And look, I mean, like Randolph and Giamatti deserve Randolph more than Giamatti deserve the awards. But Sessa's not even being mentioned. And I thought he was fantastic in this movie. And just the developments and the love and the growth between these characters throughout the movie that builds up. It's a nice warm feeling.
Yeah, to your point, the triangle relationship between those 3 characters is so even that it really doesn't make sense why Sessa's not getting the same love as the other 2. And to that point about awards, Goo, forgot to draw this line in the sand. Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon is the best supporting actor of the year.
Nah.
He is substantially better in that movie than Robert Downey Jr. is in Oppenheimer.
I
And
disagree.
I will die on that hill.
I
just
disagree.
think because we haven't seen this RDJ character, everyone's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is new." It's not as good as Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon. Not
I
even close.
disagree. Upon second rewatch with Oppenheimer, I says to myself, wow, this is something.
No, I actually just watched it again for the second time like 10 days ago. It's like cats out of the bag with him
more recently than me doesn't mean that you're right.
No, because you told me you were like, watch it again. And no, I like it even less than I did the first time. Anatomy of a Fall is another Oscar worthy movie getting talked about here. It is a French movie, I believe it's French, but it's also like half in English. There are some subtitles in it. This movie is slow, but because of the acting and the mystery behind what happens, you're gripped to the screen the whole time.
Mhm.
Now, I wonder, because it's a French movie and not an American movie, maybe that's why it doesn't have the great finish I was expecting. It's a pretty like normal finish. It's a very realistic finish to the movie, but you never really have this great fulfilling moment that you're sort of hoping for with the setup.
How many more do you have?
I have one, two more.
All right, just give me your 2.
Godzilla minus one. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Godzilla minus one is I am stunned at how much I like this movie, and I think that's the prevailing perspective out of everyone that watched this movie. It makes no sense to watch a Japanese Godzilla movie and get moved emotionally the way you do in this movie.
And your final honorable mention before we get to the 4 movies that will be nominated to get into the Mac and Guvie vault.
You mentioned it earlier. I like this way more than you do. I think Barbie was the funniest movie of the year. I think it balanced the emotions with the movie with the comedy extremely well. Marge Bob and Gosling are fucking incredible in this movie. I honestly don't. This is so far up your alley. I'm stunned that you didn't
It's
love
not.
it. Yeah, it is.
Look,
100%.
I will say this. There are patches of this movie of love and hate. I do think that it got nominated for Best Picture. I don't think it should be nominated for Best Picture, but I do think that Gerwig deserves more credit for direction because I think that it is a unique, singular vision that she completely carried out. I think that she deserves more credit for this movie. I don't care that Marge Bob isn't nominated. I'll even say this. I don't think that Ryan Gosling should be nominated, but Gerwig deserves credit.
So to those points, if you're going to nominate 10 Best Pictures, then I'm okay with Barbie getting nominated. I'm not okay with Barbie getting nominated and not Spider-Verse, though. That's where I'm sort of have this disconnect. We'll talk about Spider-Verse in a second. Barbie is just such a unique movie. Obviously, everyone's going to remember this year for Barbie. I think still in 5 years, like people are going to be talking about Barbie. It's just such a unique movie. And to your point, Gerwig deserves all the credit in the world, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work without Marge Bob. And I think very few actors can pull off what Gosling did as well.
Are you ready to nominate movies for the Mac and Guvie?
Okay,
let me get to my first nomination here. One of the first movies that I saw in the year, and I don't have really any description on the movie because I forgot to do it, but it's about a shoe, Mac, about a little shoe called the Jordan 1, and that is Air. Starring Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, and a whole lot more great people. Mac, dollars to donuts. I think this might be the most entertaining movie of the year.
It came out at a great time too. Not much had come out. It sat by itself for a couple months, in your head, thinking about best movies of the year. The casting was so good.
The casting is great. There's tons of fun basketball and 80s Easter eggs. The dialogue is fast and punchy. The acting is fantastic. Viola Davis does it again as Michael Jordan's mother. It is a movie about a shoe that we all know, a shoe that we've all seen. Yet, when they were introducing the shoe, we're all on the edge of our seats waiting for this shoe.
Yeah, I think especially why you and I loved it so much is we already knew a substantial amount of the story.
Yeah.
So they had to get in and tell the inner workings a little more delicately. We were just surprised at how invested we were in the story. And like, it was one of those movies where like every 5 minutes you're like, like it was just not Easter eggs, but for lack of a better term, there were so many Easter eggs in there that you're like, oh, this
references,
is cool.
Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Also, not to knock a movie that I'm nominating here, but the final speech there by Matt Damon, little cheesy, and I think it might have the worst soundtrack of the year.
Yeah, it didn't bother me as much as you did, but it's a lot of in your face type of songs from the 80s.
It didn't bother me as much as, so are you saying that I bother you or the soundtrack bothers me? Because the way that you said it, you're saying that I bother you.
Interpret it how you may.
Oh, no.
Goo!
Yeah.
My number 3 movie of the year, just ahead of Air, actually, is American Fiction. American Fiction was a late breaker, came out in December. This is a rated R comedy and drama with a runtime of 117 minutes, just under 2 hours. Roddy Tees has this 94%, 96% on Metacritic and 81. Good. This movie was written by Cord Jefferson, who you really wouldn't know from anything else. This is his first big screen directorial debut here.
Was he the writer of Jurassic Park 3?
No, for sure.
Who am I thinking of?
No idea. No idea.
You
Al
you talk.
Jefferson, maybe.
You
Uh,
you talk.
he was a writer and editor on Master of None, the Aziz Netflix series, The Good Place, and also HBO's Watchmen. So obviously he's coming from pretty good pedigree here. This movie is based on the novel Erasure by Percival Everett, and this script is nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Again, directed by Cord Jefferson. Synopsis: a novelist who's fed up with the establishment profiting from quote unquote black entertainment uses a pen name to write a book that propels him.
The Holdovers. Alexander Payne wrote Jurassic Park 3.
There you go. Okay.
That's our fun fact. I'll put that one on TikTok.
All right. That's interesting. Actually, that is a nice little fun fact.
No.
To write a book that propels him into the heart of hypocrisy and the madness he claims to disdain. This movie stars Jeffrey Wright as Monk Ellison, Tracy Ellis Ross as Lisa Ellison, Leslie Uggams, great name, as Agnes Ellison, Sterling K. Brown as Clifford Ellison, Myra Lucretia Taylor as Lorraine, John Ortiz as Arthur, Eric Alexander as Coraline, Issa Rae as Sinatra Golden, Raymond Anthony Thompson as Maynard, and Adam Brody as Wiley Valdespino. This movie's been nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Actor, and Best Supporting Actor. Jeffrey Wright is incredible in this movie, as is Sterling K. Brown. He might even be better than Wright. This movie is hysterical. Now, it may not be the funniest movie of the year, but there's like 3 or 4 moments that fucking kill you. On top of that, there's a really nice heart to the story surrounding that Ellison family. They do a nice job balancing the family aspect. Gets maybe a little too heavy-handed at times, but you like the characters so much that you're invested in it. Like I said, Wright and Brown are so fantastic and deserving of those nominations. Big ups to Cord Jefferson and his debut, giving us a very memorable movie, a very unique movie. I gave it 38 hot dogs. It is my number 3 movie of the year. But to your point, which you teased a little bit earlier, the biggest thing, and really the only thing I don't like in this movie, Goo, is the ending, the conclusion.
I question it every single day, really. Do I like it?
Maybe to that point, you're constantly thinking about why they ended the movie that way. It just leaves so much to be desired. And it's interesting because I do think the ending is playing on the social commentary that the whole movie has.
Yeah.
It's just such an unsatisfying ending.
Also, the movie is not as funny as it was sold to me, but that's more of a me
I
issue.
disagree. I thought it was funnier than
I thought it was very, very funny, but it was sold to me as being a real laugh riot.
Yeah, that's what it was for me.
Also, Sterling K. Brown is hilarious, and Jeffrey Wright, pitch perfect. You like that? He's pitch perfect in this.
How about that, Goo?
All right, shall I nominate my next one? Where
your
is
number
it?
1 movie of the year, Goo?
My number 1 movie on the year, and once again, I do not have a description of the movie, but it's about a big old bomb that went off, and the man that created it and his team. That is Oppenheimer. This is Christopher Nolan getting back to just making a fucking masterpiece. It is Cillian Murphy in one of my favorite performances of all time. Just a complete movie-stealing performances, 4 different times of his life, playing them all perfectly. This is, I think, not just a movie of the year candidate, but it feels like an all-timer. Where I feel like some actors here are like, oh, that's the best actor of the year. That's the best movie. This feels like you can put it up there with all-timers. You can put Cillian Murphy with all-timers in this performance. It's an amazingly paced movie for being 3 hours, and it's just over different parts of Oppenheimer's life. And the way that it's told in this non-linear fashion really, really helps it out. It's a film made for moviegoers. It's unlike a lot of biopics, too, as well. And there's not a bad performance or storytelling technique in it. Murphy's Oppenheimer, I think, like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, is just, you get lost in the performance. You get lost in what he's doing on screen, and he carries this I think he's in the entire movie. I think he's in all 3 hours of the movie, and he's just so good. Just the wide eyes, the emptiness that he shows, just punches of grief that he's dealing with through his life and the conflict and the consequences. But the movie feels like real life. Like, this feels like this is just a documentary. This is documentary footage of these characters. And it just does such an amazing job with that. I would like Emily Blunt in this. I think that she deserves a little more credit too, where she doesn't do much for a while. And then once you get to her in that hearing with her correcting the lawyer that's going at her, is just such a standout performance from the year. The movie does a great job of, much like I talked about with the shoe in Air, how you're waiting for the shoe to pop up.
For the
In
shoe
this
to
movie,
drop, for
for
lack
the
of a
shoe to
better
drop,
term.
in this movie, you are waiting for the testing of this bomb. Roughly 20 minutes of the movie is them like preparing for the testing of the bomb, and you're waiting there for it. And you are on the edge of your seat waiting for this, something that you know happens and you know went well, and it's just pulled off beautifully. The music in this, the scoring this is haunting, and it pushes the movie. It pushes every single scene. Hans Zimmer does an amazing job with this. The editing is some of the best that I've seen in a while. The runtime does not feel like that runtime. I thought it was a very effective use of the black and white. And, just the questioning of Oppenheimer as the backbone of this movie is perfect.
Yeah, Goo, it's an absolute masterpiece. The direction and cinematography is some of the best you'll ever see. We talked about it when we reviewed the movie at the time, and maybe it's a topic we'll get to eventually. I think Cillian Murphy gives off one of the best performances of all time. Like, there might be a handful of performances better than him in any movie ever. He's masterful in this. And to your point, of the 3 hours of runtime, he's on the screen for just about every second, and that's truly impressive. I like in mostly any other given year, this would be number one with a bullet for me. The one movie ahead of it, we'll talk about in a second. There's no knocks on Oppenheimer comparing it to the other movie. The thing I will say about it, it's really got nothing to do. It's not lessening the movie. To me, you bring up the support characters: Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, and Matt Damon, all stand out more than Robert Downey Jr. did.
I disagree with you. I think
bothers me
is
so
fantastic
much.
too. I think
it bothers me so much that Robert Downey Jr. gets this.
And then also
and
everyone else in that courtroom scene, I think that Safdie's amazing in this.
Yeah, Safdie's great. What bothers me especially too is RDJ shoots his scenes. Most of them are without Oppenheimer on screen, and for some reason that bothers me. Like trying to the conversations that Josh Hartnett's character and Oppie have in this are fantastic because ideologically they are so far apart on the spectrum, but because what they're both striving for brings them together. Like, that's the best relationship in the whole movie, except for the Damon one. It makes no sense to me why RDJ's getting the flowers. The movie's amazing, and the segmented and non-linear storytelling in general, you would think would be distracting, but because it's Christopher Nolan, he does it, and it makes a 3-hour movie feel like an hour and a half. It makes no sense, but it does. It almost is like he vacuumed all the air out of it, and it's perfect at every point along the way. We see Cillian Murphy playing Robert Oppenheimer in 3 or 4 stages, and each time we see him, you recognize the change in the character, but it's still subtle, and it's not like he's just so good in this. And I just like everything this movie is nominated for, it should win. And that's why we've talked about this in text a little bit, what we're going to be betting on for the Oscars. I just have a hard time thinking that it's not going to sweep every category it's nominated for.
And think about the sacrifice that the guy who played Einstein had to make, where he couldn't have soup for 4 weeks.
My man is in 2 scenes in the whole movie, and he acted like he had to go 6 months without eating soup. Incredible.
Also, like, soup's good, but you can eat other foods.
Yeah, soup sucks. Like, come on, get out of here with soup. Goo, my number one movie on the year, and I think it may be the best animated movie of all time. The more time that I get away from it, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This came out in June of 2023. It is a PG-rated animation, action, adventure, comedy, family, fantasy, sci-fi. And Goo, that's 7 things I just listed, and it crushes all 7 of those genres. Runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes. On Roddy T's, 95% from the critics, 94% from the audience, and 86% on Metacritic. This, of course, is written by Lord and Miller. We know all their exploits. The third writer on here is Dave Callahan, Goo. This gentleman has written Doom, The Expendables, Godzilla, Zombieland Double Tap, Wonder Woman 84, Mortal Kombat, and Shang-Chi. I actually think he was one of the writers on The Flash as well, which is what a bizarre lineup that is. This has 3 directors, and with all the animation styles, it sort of makes sense. Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, Justin K. Thompson. We don't really know any of them, but obviously I think this is going to be a launching pad for them in their careers. Synopsis: Miles Morales returns for the next chapter in the Spider-Verse saga, an epic adventure that will transport Brooklyn's full-time friendly neighborhood Spider-Man across the multiverse to join forces with Gwen Stacy and a new team of spider people to face off against a villain more powerful than anything they have ever encountered. This stars Shamik Moore as Miles Morales, Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy, Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara, Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, Issa Rae. Christ, I'm just dying over here. Every day I'm dying. I can't recover. Issa Rae as Jessica Drew, Brian Tyree Henry as Jefferson Davis, Luna Lauren Velez as Rio Morales, Jason Schwartzman, another Coppola, as the Spot. We also have Daniel Kaluuya in here as Hobie Brown. He's fantastic. Andy Samberg as Ben Riley. Makes you laugh out loud twice. Karen Sony as Spider-Man India. He is the Uber driver from Deadpool, cab driver. Amanda Stenberg as Margot Kesh. Jorna Taccone as Italian Adrian Toombs, which is what the movie opens with Gwen Stacy. It's fucking awesome. And Shea Wiggum plays George Stacy, Gwen's father. Somehow, some way, this is only nominated for one Oscar, Best Animated Feature. I don't know how the fuck that's possible. If you haven't seen this movie in a while, basically the story surrounds anomalies and how they stand out and need to be contained. And that's a metaphor really for what's happening in Miles's life. We come to find out that Miles is the original anomaly across the Spider-Verse here. I just love how this movie takes seemingly small plot points in the first movie and expands upon them and turns them into these great meaningful things in the second movie. And even the villain, who we interpret as Guvie, ends up being terribly menacing and overpowered. And we actually understand his motivations and why he's doing what he's doing. The animation is innovative. The soundscape in this movie is incredible. They use some new animation techniques in here. We also are left with, I think, maybe the best tease for a third movie or blue balls at the end of a second movie we've ever gotten. When you find
Dune
out
Part 2
is I think very good, but that's more complete than this movie is. You know what I mean? There's a complete finish to that story at the end of Dune Part 2, and they're basically starting a new story in Dune Part 3 or Dune Messiah. When we figure out we are not in Miles's original universe and we're in that 42 universe or whatever, it's fucking mind-blowing, jaw-dropping. Such a great moment when you see the second Miles and he's become the Prowler. It's so fucking cool. It's just, this movie moved me emotionally. It made me laugh. It left me wanting more. I don't know if I've ever liked an animated movie as much as this. To me, it is for sure the best Spider-Man movie ever. It is for sure the best comic book animated movie ever. And I think it just might be the best animated movie ever, too. It's in any given year, I would say Oppenheimer would be the winner here. But to me, this movie is so new, so unique, and so fantastic. To me, this is the best movie of 2023.
Yeah, I mean, the first one had the groundbreaking style in its animation, and this one takes it to a whole new level. The atmosphere, the emotion, the way that the animation plays with that is amazing. I thought that the characters are wonderfully written, animated, performed. It feels like live action when it comes to that, and you caring about those characters. The Lego Spider-Man stuff, like that, that takes it to a whole new notch of we are going to put every possible Spider-Man animation and thought into this, and the attention to detail is great. I love what they do with Gwen's world and the animation there, and how they do Spider-Punk.
Which the whole Gwen story lying underneath this whole story is fucking phenomenal.
And then also what they do with the Vulture at the beginning too. That looks amazing. This movie just looks amazing. The story is great. I love the characters of Gwen and Miles. I would like a full Gwen movie. I know that you feel we got enough of Gwen in this, but I think you could do even more there. And just the second half of this movie with the amazing action and the animation just knocks your socks off. The cameos, the fun Spider-Man Easter eggs, and that it's not a battle per se, but that chase through the Spider-Man headquarters just looks amazing. And
awesome.
This movie deserves all the praise, and we gave it 40 hot dogs.
Yeah, with both of these movies, both got 40 hot dogs from the both of us. My number one is Spider-Verse. Goo's number one is Oppenheimer. They both deserve entry into the Guvie vault. If you look back to what we've reviewed over the last few years, these movies are both on the short list for a best movie we've seen in the last decade. So it's just like I said at the beginning, two all-timers, but I also think the gap between these two movies and every other movie we've talked about is kind of substantial. I don't think there's movies even close to these two.
All right, so the final four movies nominated for the Mac and Guvie Vault. I have Oppenheimer and Air.
And I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and American Fiction.
So head over to X right now and cast your vote for who you believe was the best movie of 2023. I have the end theme in both of those, so I'll go ahead and do that in post. I'm working with a new board today. And Mac's Act could be anything. It could be a boat. And very quickly, Mac, let me just throw the Oscars are coming out this weekend, Academy Awards. Do you have any bets that you'll be putting in?
So I put 2 bets in. Like,
by the way, on DraftKings, you can bet on DraftKings.
On DraftKings, you can look up Academy Awards and bet on all the categories. We're both kicking ourselves. When I looked 3 weeks ago, I think Cillian Murphy was minus 200 for Best Actor. He's now minus 1,000, so we missed out on that. I did bet on Lily Gladstone for Best Actress at plus 175.
Mm-hmm.
She's now minus 200, so I think that they're trending her way.
And I'll be voting for Emma Stone at plus 150 over her.
I think it's
awesome.
I think Gladstone's going to win. And again, part of the reason why I think that is because Killers of the Flower Moon is going to get shut out everywhere else, so they're going to want to give it something. I also bet on, I believe it was Anatomy of a Fall for a best screenplay at like my plus 175 or something like that. It's just the best odds to bet on stuff was right before the BAFTAs 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And so we kind of missed the boat on some things, but those are the 2 I have.
I think the 2 that I'm going to bet on is best hair and best makeup and hairstyle. I'm going to take Poor Things at plus 125 over Maestro. And then THR is telling us to put our money on The Creator for best visual effects. And that is over Godzilla -1.
Yeah, we chatted about that a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if The Creator wins that. Goose, sorry, I misspoke. That's how long ago I put this bet in.
Yeah.
I actually bet Oppenheimer best adapted over the other one because, like I said,
American Fiction.
I think it's going to sweep the categories, and getting anything Oppenheimer plus money seems like a steal. So.
Oppenheimer is plus 200 right now.
Yeah. So American
Fiction.
I would bet if you get plus odds on anything Oppenheimer, bet it. And I did get Lily Gladstone at plus 175.
All right, Mac, where can the folks find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform we are Mac & Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. Includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, but more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear, 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown. WatertownSportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com, merch. Go and check out our merch on that website. Check us out next week. By the end of the week, you will know what our March Macness is, but we get a little more setting up to do, so we need 1 episode in between to fill that out.
Bang.
Bang. Tuesdays or Goose Days, I abuse kangaroos. Which button should I hit? Because they're both end theme.
I don't know. Everything you've hit so far, I haven't heard. It's like the lowest thing ever.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.